Franklin Raff Show on Chicago's new talk, WCGO.
I've never written a best-selling book, which makes me an expert on the topic. I tell you, it seems to me as I read, there are different ways to write. I like paying attention to how people write. One way to write is the easy way to write that I was taught in high school. And it goes kind of like this. You have an introduction and then kind of an exposition. And you say, well, you know, the example of David from the Bible works well here, and it fits here, and I'll use this part of that. And then there's Steven Spielberg or the history of Pixar, and that's going to work for Chapter 3 as an example. And then, you know, John Henry and the decline of the working man and the revolution is going to be here for 4, and I'm going to talk about this thing, and then 5 is going to be about Stalin. And there's another way to do it, and it's much harder, and I've tried to do it. I tried in college to write my senior thesis like this, and I had rolls of paper and notes everywhere and puzzle pieces that wouldn't fit and logical problems. I wasn't smart enough to write the other way. And the other way, loosely, is to take enormous ideas that are applicable and to fly through them, gathering an awesome amount of historical anecdotes as you fly and sort of sprinkle them over the narrative. You notice I haven't used the words fiction or nonfiction, truth or false. And it is the mark of a really great mind to be able to write like this. Because, you know, it's like having a meal with more courses than you could possibly imagine. But somehow it all makes sense. I hate to talk like a connoisseur or a gourmet. But this book is like this. It's called Dinosaur Derivatives. Dinosaur Derivatives and Other Trades by Jeremy Josse. And I always know if a book is really good because I have no idea what question to start with. What questions won't seem selfish. But, of course, they're always very selfish. But the author, Mr. Josse, joins us now in Chicago. Thank you for joining us, Jeremy Josse.
Well, thank you very much for having me on the channel, and thank you for those words. That's much appreciated.
I don't know if that makes sense to you. Sometimes I'm way out of limb, and Frenchie and Mike, my producers, say, you've definitely lost it today, or you've had too much coffee. But I do mean it.
Well, look, I think, look, I mean, your words are very flattering. I think that what I tried to do was, rather than take these big ideas, I mean, you know, the book takes a series of big ideas in finance, right, whether they're concepts of valuation.
Yeah, let's talk about the ideas, so I give the listeners something concrete. You talk about value in business, uncertainty, what a contract is, which is really on my mind right now because I'm in the middle of a big one. What is a financial instrument?
Right.
A legal fiction, right? What is financial innovation? What is ownership? Which is a question nobody asks, and it is everything, isn't it? And what is money? What is taxation? What is fraud? What is regulation? So you're offering a sort of panopticon of perspectives on all of these critical things. And the remarkable thing about it, and I having read many business books, having tried to be a much better businessman than I ever was, having read many business books, these are not questions that are often asked. You know, instead of what is ownership, you say how to manage the things you own.
Right.
Rarely do business books touch upon these transhistorical, nebulous or abstract elements of the definition.
Yeah. So that's exactly right. I mean, the book tries to take these big ideas. I mean, I studied both as a undergraduate at Oxford University. I mean, you can hear I'm originally from England, and as a graduate, I studied a lot of philosophy and economics. And I then spent much of my career in finance. But, you know, I always had these sort of philosophical hankerings. And so the book does try to take these big concepts and just give people a sense of what these big concepts really mean. And rather than, and, you know, I think to your point, your very flattering points at the beginning, rather than sort of trying to go through these concepts in a sort of boring academic way, I just try to tell stories. I just try to tell different stories about these concepts, and then from those stories elucidate what it tells us about the concept. And I hopefully that's both a fun and accessible way to give people, as I say, a sort of philosophical and slightly curious angle onto some of these ideas. And as you say, I think we take a lot of this stuff for granted in our normal business life. I mean, we take a lot of philosophical stuff for granted. I mean, I don't worry too much about, I'm sitting on a chair at the moment. I don't worry too much about whether that chair exists. But, that problem's always there, and in one sense. And these philosophical issues in finance, which often involve all sorts of moral paradoxes and moral hypocrisies, they're always there, even though we have to get on with our daily financial business.
What was your favorite? This is the standard bad interviewer will always ask. What was your favorite part of the book to write, and tell us more about it? But in this case, I'm doing it just so I can get away from all of this hoi polloi fluff that I've been spewing and get to some of your core angles on something that you really want to talk about.
Yeah, so I think, the stories are of three types. Some of them are based on legends of old, such as, the story of Faust or the story of Joseph from the Bible. Some of them are based on my own career, but some of them I made up entirely myself. And I have to say the ones I made up entirely myself were the most enjoyable. And, I mean, for example, the story of the political economics of the city of Atlantis was one that I loved writing. And what I try to say there is I try to outline how Atlantis may have been run as an economic system. And I really start with Plato, and one of the things that Plato said, we don't need to go into a lot of detail, but one of the things he said was that states, and in particular cities, in those days Greek city-states, should be run by these philosopher kings, right? Mm-hmm. Now, in many ways, it's frankly one of the most stupid ideas in philosophy, because we all know that academics don't necessarily make the best leaders, but that was his idea, and I'd say in today's society we have a danger of going the other direction, and some of the dimmest people tend to go into politics, but that by the by. The key point is it's a story about this philosopher king who's running the city of Atlantis, and he's thinking a lot about the system of taxation, of distributive justice, and he gets very focused on this idea of merit, that each should be given wealth according to their merit. And one of the things that I try to bring out in the story, and many great, serious philosophical thinkers do bring out, is that when you actually analyze the idea of each according to his merit, in one sense it can actually be seen as a very socialistic idea, but in another sense it can actually be seen as a very capitalistic idea. And parentheses, this philosopher king takes the whole concept to an extreme and sort of sinks the whole island with his nutty ideas. But my underlying theme there,
it's very capitalist also, because it negates the possibility of individualistic.
Right.
What it does is it says that we'll tell you exactly what you're capable of, whether you like it or not.
Right. Well, as I say, in one sense it's capitalistic because you reward someone by their merit, but at the same time you can say, well, what really is merit, and we're going to only reward someone according to their merit or their effort. Right. So, but it touches on perhaps the biggest theme in the whole book, which is that we're very interested, particularly in America today, in people either on the sort of liberal left or on the sort of capitalistic right. And I just no longer believe that either of these ideas are really nuanced enough for our modern political economies. I think, and I think they're actually they're really concepts that are the product of the Industrial Revolution. I don't think they were really ideas that people in the Middle Ages thought much about, or even in ancient times, or certainly not in hunter-gatherer times. And one of the key themes of the book is just to say, hey guys, these ideas are getting outdated, and let's not be too entrenched, and let's judge each issue and each economic issue on its merits rather than starting with ideological dogma.
Mm-hmm. I'm a student of Herb Cohen, and I really loved your Ferrari story. Are you familiar with Herb Cohen? I presume you are.
I am, yeah.
He's doing well. He's in touch with the show, so you can. I don't want to get personal, but it's been some ups and downs, but he's great. But I want you to tell your Ferrari story because it's so good, and we're all in business here. So many of our listeners are small business people themselves. So give us a little idea, a little hint on that one little concrete bit.
Okay, so that's another story that really relates to the story of Faust, which is a very old medieval German legend. But the chapter starts by saying, what happens if you go, you want a Ferrari, you want a fast car, you go into a dealership, and it's expensive, right, to buy a Ferrari, and the salesman is a cunning salesman, and he you can't quite get there in terms of the price. But eventually he says to you, look, I'll cut the price, but you've got to give me not just cash, but also your right to vote, your voting right. And, that's a strange way of dealing, right? And what I then say is, well, look, that's actually what the story of Faust is about. And the story of Faust, of course, is about a man who sold his soul to the devil in exchange for pleasures and all sorts of material benefits and wisdom and all sorts of things. And what's really going on there? Well, there are two types of rights we have. On the one hand, there are rights over material things. We have rights of ownership. We have rights over securities. We have rights over cash. We have rights to own cars. But we also have other types of rights, which are also called rights, which are our rights to freedom and our rights to vote and our rights to moral dignity. And the whole Faust story, in many ways, is saying, don't confuse the two, and you shouldn't be trading one for the other. It's fine to trade cash for a car, but you shouldn't be trading your moral dignity or your basic freedom for a material asset, which is what Faust did, and which is what the car salesman was proposing. He was saying, hey, you can buy this car, but if you sell me your right to vote. So I wanted to bring out, it's really a point in sort of financial jurisprudence, the difference between what we call alienable rights, which is ownership rights, versus our more fundamental human rights. And it has been a big issue throughout history. I mean, you think of American slavery. What's wrong with slavery? Well, the problem with slavery is that you're basically buying someone's basic human freedom for cash. And that's why it's wrong, and that's why it's a sort of Faustian pact. Arguably the same with prostitution, right? Some people believe, selling sex for cash is selling something which undermines the party's dignity. So it's just a nice way, both through the Ferrari, but through the whole story of Faust, to bring out the difference between rights over material ownership versus our more fundamental human rights.
Yes, and it brings up core problems with materialism in general, which is, I think, probably, I imagine you know why you chose the Ferrari. He says, I'll knock 50% off the price and make this magnificent material possession available to you, but you need to give me your right, your proxy.
and I think that's dead right, because look, one of the another theme throughout the book is venality, and actually I have a horrible feeling that many people, when they're short of cash, would actually sell their right to vote.
They would, yeah.
And the result would be we'd end up with an oligopoly, oligarchy run by a bunch of guys who've got the money to buy up everyone's voting rights. So, yeah, we do have to be very careful to not always trade in those human rights just for cash and material goods.
Yeah, I have so many things, because materials, and the reason I bring up Cohen is because our possessions are symbols. They are
right.
These Ferraris are cars. They symbolize something. As I told my wife when I bought her I bought my wife a very, very beautiful watch to thank her for 2 babies. And she said, my God, this is really more than I've ever spent on a car. I bought this custom watch with diamonds all over it. And I said, honey, I'm not buying the watch. I'm buying a greenish tint on all of your friends as long as you live. And that's worth more than any watch. Well, we could talk for hours. This applies. We keep it simple and concrete, but it applies to business, to contracts, to relationships, to our relationships with our friends and employees. It's fascinating stuff. And I just want to say the name of the book again. See, now I've been flipping through it. Dinosaur Derivatives and Other Trades. Jeremy, I have the PDF. I want the book when it comes out. Jeremy Josse, Dinosaur Derivatives and Other Trades. Dinosaur Derivatives and Other Trades. Jeremy Josse. Thank you, sir.